and welcome. And this is the course of class 11th Tamil Nadu history book. And here we are covering unit by unit and chapters by chapter. So here we will start the unit 2 of this book, and from here we will start basically the Vedic culture. Okay, so this course is presented to you by Plus Pramesh E-Library, and you can visit the website, and also you will find some interesting new things here, like wall charts of constitutional amendments, like wall chart of entire history. Here is me, Supriya Singhal, your mentor for this course, and this is something about me. You can read from here, and also you can follow me on Crispy Stories, which is my food blog, okay, on Instagram. And here I'm pretty active, and I run few challenges and competition also. So here you can connect to me. Now this is an opportunity for you guys, because if you guys want to actually become an educator and want to fulfill the dream of teaching others, you can actually email your CV at this particular mail ID. Now we will begin the unit 2 of class 11th NCR, not NCRT but Tamil Nadu book. So here we will start with the chapter 3, which is the Vedic culture. So we already have studied 2-3 things. Okay, first we studied the geographical features of India and everything about it. Then we went on to discuss the prehistoric times, in which we discussed about Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic. Then we went to Harappan civilization, and now we are actually moving towards Vedic culture. Okay, so you will find that the cities of Harappan culture, they had declined around 1500 BC, because we studied the decline in the Harappan culture and the various causes of it. And you find that the economic and the administration, the polity, the system that existed in the Harappan culture obviously also declined as soon as the culture declined. And around this period only you will find that speakers of Indo-Aryan language, okay, of which you will find that Hindi is also a part. So this Indo-Aryan language speakers, they actually you can call it as ancient Sanskrit. So they used to speak a language called as ancient Sanskrit. They entered the northwest India, because we know that northwest was the place from where invasions happened, and they came from this Indo-Iranian region. Okay, initially what happened, they could have come in the smaller numbers only, because they had to cross the passes in the northwestern mountains, and that is why you find that in the initial their settlements, they were around this Punjab plains, okay, like this Doabs of Satluj and Indus. But later they moved towards the Indo-Gangetic area. Why? Because if I have to draw the India map, okay, so you will realize, okay, let me take something like this. So yeah, so northwest is the entry point. Okay, so initial settlements are happening around this region, and as and when they are getting settled here, they are actually moving farther east and farther south, and therefore you encounter the Indo-Gangetic plain. Okay, so their initial settlements were in the valleys of northwest and in the plains of Punjab, but later they moved to the Indo-Gangetic plains. And as these were mainly cattle keeping people, this is a very important point, because this was asked in the UPSC prelims also. Okay, so they were mainly in search for these pastures. By the 6th century BC, they occupied the whole of North India. Okay, and that is why this North Indian region came to be known as Aryavart. Okay, if you are watching few like these what do you call these serials like Ramayana, Mahabharata, you might have heard the word Aryavarta. Okay, so that is why it has also been mentioned there. Now this period between 1500 to 1000 and then 1000 BC to 600 BC, this entire period is called as the Vedic period, out of which this 1500 to 1000 BC is called as the Rig Vedic or early Vedic period, and this 1000 to 600 BC is called as the later Vedic period. Okay, so we will discuss them one by one, because things are changing from early or Rig Vedic period to later Vedic period. Okay, now first we will talk about the original home of Aryans. Okay, so we know that these Aryans invaded our our India, so they came from outside, but what was their original home? Okay, so here you will find that original home of Aryans has been a debatable question, and especially you will find number of theories existing about their origin. Here I have discussed about few of these theories in the wall chart of history, okay, whose link will be mentioned in the comment box below. So you will find that this original home of Aryans is a debatable question, and there are many views existing around it. Different scholars have identified different reasons and different original homes of Aryans. Okay, some say that they have come from Arctic, some say they have come from Germany, and that is why you know that World War II. Okay, remember the Hitler case, Adolf Hitler, who basically used to call that he was a pure Aryan race, and that is why he was allowed to persecute, like he was persecuting Jews thinking that they were not from a pure Aryan race. So you know, there have been a different theory, like some say they are come from Central Asia, some say they are from southern Russia. Okay, our freedom fighter about whom you must have studied or will be studying in this modern history, B.J. Tilak or Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he used to say that Aryans have come from the Arctic region, okay, and he did some astronomical calculations and he actually proved it. Now, however, the theory of southern Russia appears to be more probable and widely accepted by the historians, like this side. Now from here what happened was, Aryans actually, see, whatever home of Aryan might have been, obviously this was the home. We don't know what the original home is, but we know from there they have actually migrated to different countries. And India they entered around 1500 BC and they came to be known as Indo-Aryans. Why Indo-Aryans? Because they have come now to India. Okay, and they used to speak Indo-Aryan language, which was called as Sanskrit. And this Sanskrit was little bit different than what later what we know as Sanskrit right now. Okay, like ancient Sanskrit sort of a thing. Now we come to the Vedic literature, which is a very, very important part. Like after Harappan civilization, like history can be said to be have well defined, and history has said to be having more written evidences. Harappan civilization also had written evidences, but since it was a proto-historic time wherein you cannot decipher whatever is written, so Vedic civilization provides you a good view about history, because here whatever is written you have deciphered it. Okay, so the word Veda itself means to know. Okay, it has been derived from this root word Vid, which means to know. In other words, the term Veda, it signifies someone who has superior knowledge. Okay, and the Vedic literature consists of 4 Vedas. What are those 4 Vedas? Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sam Veda and Athar Veda. Okay, Rig Veda is what was published in those earlier times, like Rig Vedic time, and that is why this early Vedic period came to be known as Rig Vedic culture. Why? Because only one book called as Rig Veda existed here. Okay, so Rig Veda is this earliest of 4 Vedas and it consists of 1028 hymns. Okay, hymns are those like, you can say something like songs, but not exactly songs, which used to sing and then chant, etc. So it has 1028 hymns, and out of these hymns were actually sung in the praise of gods. Like that time obviously there was no Honey Singh and Bollywood, so they used to sing those hymns in the praise of various gods. Okay, so we are discussing about Rig Veda. Now we come to the Yajur Veda. So this Yajur Veda consists of various details of the rules that need to be observed while you're performing certain sacrifices. So suppose if you're sitting in a havan, okay, in a havan kund, or if you're sitting in a sacrificial pyre, you need to actually observe certain rules. You need to pour some ghee, you need to put some havan samagri. So all that rules etc. were mentioned in this Yajur Veda. Sam Veda is actually the book of music. Okay, so it is the Veda of music. It is said to be basically the tune for which the purpose of chanting is said. So they say na Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. So there is a tune to it, and that tune is given by the Sam Veda. And then it is called as the book of chants as well, and here is what the origin of music has been traced to, specifically Indian music. Okay, and finally comes this Athar Veda, which is the 4th Veda, which basically contains the details of rituals, not the rules but details of rituals, like you need to do this and that, and then some like activities etc. So that and all comes in the Athar Veda. Now besides the Vedas, there were other books also, like other sacred works which we consider sacred for our religion, okay, for our like faith, for our spirituality. And what were those books? They were like Brahmanas, they were Upanishads, they were Aranyakas, and epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, which are also coming on DD Bharati and DD National because of this corona or quarantine issue. Okay, so these Brahmanas or Brahmins, these are the treatises which are basically relating to this sacrificial ceremony or prayer that you do. Upanishads basically are the philosophical texts. Where has the world originated? What is the purpose of your life? Okay, so all these questions are dealt with in Upanishads, and these are philosophical texts, like they deal with the philosophical questions. And on the topic of, do you have a soul? Where does our soul go? If we die, does our soul die? So all these questions are dealt in Upanishads. Okay, it talks about origins of the world, the mysteries of the nature. Is there a universe? Is there not a universe? Is there a solar system or not a solar system? So all this is dealt in Upanishads. Okay, then comes the Aranyakas. So Aranyakas are basically called as the forest books. This has been asked in one of the state service examination also. So Aranyakas are these forest books, and they deal with mysticism, rituals, rites and sacrifices. Okay, the author of Ramayana is Valmiki, and that of Mahabharata is Vedvyas. So please remember this, because I know it's a very common information, but sometimes we cannot remember this common information also. Then now what we'll do is we'll discuss each of these Vedic times, like Rig Vedic time or the early Vedic time and later Vedic time in greater details. So first of all, let's come to the Rig Vedic age or the early Vedic period, which starts from 1500 BC and goes till 1000 BC. So you'll realize that during this Rig Vedic period, the Aryans were the like dominating race, and they used to be present in this Indus region. I told you, Punjab plains, etc. And this Rig Veda, that the book that we are referring to in this particular time, this Rig Veda refers to Sapta Sindhu. Sapta Sindhu in the sense 7 rivers which are basically jointly related to Indus, or the land of 7 rivers. And what are those 7 rivers? Five tributaries of Indus plus the mystic river of Saraswati, which used to exist in the earlier time. But now we have just, there was an archaeological study also conducted which said Saraswati is still there, but we cannot find it flowing anywhere. Okay. And then the political, cultural and the social life of Rig Vedic people can be traced to those hymns that they used to sing. Okay. What about the political organization? So you will find that the basic unit, like the first unit of political organization, was the kul or the family. Suppose this is you, then your family, your mother, father, your children will become this is called as your kul or family, and this is the basic unit of how polity is organized. Then several families coming together, you will find on the basis of their kinship to form a village or a gram. Okay. Okay, so then you will realize these several families are coming together on the basis of their kinship to form a village or a gram. Okay, this is what happens even today. You, your family, then your village. Okay, the leader of this gram was called as Gramani. So what we'll do is we'll actually draw like a flowchart here so that you can remember it all. Okay, so this is you. Then we go little up and you have a family. Then you have a village. Okay, village is also called as gram, and the person who's in authority here is called as the Gramani. Okay, then lot of villages they come together to form a bigger unit called as Vishu, and this Vishu is led by Vishyapati. Okay, the highest political unit above Vishu is the Jana or the tribe. So all these people of you, your family, your village, your collection of villages, you are belonging to one tribe or Jana, and then there were several tribes basically. So that is why you will find in Rig Vedic time, when you are even chanting those hymns, there is a mention about different tribal kingdoms. Okay, during the Rig Vedic time, for example, Bharat tribe, Matsya tribe, Yadus tribe, Purus tribe, and within them, each of these tribes, this was the political organization from the top to the bottom. The head of the kingdom of this Jana or the tribe was called as king or Rajan. Okay, and this Rig Vedic polity was basically monarchical. Why? Because there is a king on the top. Okay, but king, you will find, is not like alone, like he's organizing or he's actually leading the Jana tribe. He has basically help from 2 assemblies and also some priests. So you will find that in Rig Vedic times, the polity was normally monarchical and the succession was hereditary. Okay, the king was assisted by Purohit, which we call as the head priest, right? The Pandit. And then Senani, who was the commander of army, which we also called as Senapati. Okay, and there were 2 popular bodies, okay, or the assemblies, what we call as Sabha and Samiti. Okay, and the Sabha, which is the former one, it is basically council of elders, while Samiti is where the assembly of entire people. So in Sabha, only limited people will be called, while in Samiti, entire, lot of people will be called, entire village will be called, and there will be discussion of issues. So now king is there, he is monarchic, he basically it's a monarchical setup, but he is also being helped by Purohit, who is priest, basically religious related stuff. Then there is Senapati, who's holding the army related stuff. Then there is Sabha, and then there is Samiti. Okay, then we'll talk about the social life. So in social life, you'll find that the Rig Vedic society was patriarchal in nature. Okay, the basic unit of society was family or graham. The head of the family was known as grahapati. Okay, so there is Rig Vedic society, the basic unit society. So Rig Vedic society, you know already, gram or gramani was that like the starting point where the collection of villages is happening, like where you are actually talking about a lot of people at one point of time, and the head of family, like the kula, was called as the grahapati or kulpati. Okay, here you will find certain practices, and these have been asked in the examinations before. For example, here monogamy was generally practiced. Monogamy in the sense that one person will marry like only one person, like one man will marry only one female, because you know in the earlier times king used to have many wives. Okay, so that was called as the polygamy, where one person is having many wives. So here you will find monogamy is generally practiced, but polygamy is also found in certain royal and noble families. Okay, wife took care of household and participated in all major ceremonies. Women actually were given equal status and opportunities as men, specifically in their spiritual and intellectual development. Okay, so today what we see is actually deterioration from the Rig Vedic society. Okay, there were women poets like Apala, Vishwara, Ghosha and Lopamudra, and this you need to remember. This has been asked in the state service examination. So you need to remember women poets were 4. AVGL. Okay, AVGL, Apala, Vishwara, Ghosha and Lopamudra, and this is during the Rig Vedic time. And women could even attend the popular assemblies like Samiti, and there was no child marriage and no mention of Satiya that you have found. Sati was not practiced here. Then here you will find that both men and women, they wore upper and lower garments made of cotton and wool. A variety of ornaments were used by both men and women, because they used to wear, even like in the Mahabharata and Ramayana you must have found, no, like they are wearing, like even the men were wearing earrings and stuff like that. Wheat, barley, milk and its products, like products made from milk like curd and ghee, they were very very common. Vegetables and fruits were also like eaten on daily basis. Eating of cow meats was prohibited because cattle was there, like cow hamari mata hai types, like they used to consider cow as god, so they did not used to consume cow's meat as such, and it was considered as a sacred animal. Chariot racing, horse racing, dicing, music and dance were the favorite pastimes. And the social divisions, like between the you will find the different section of society, they were not rigid, like one could move in the mobility and hierarchy up and down, and but these divisions like of varna, which became jati later, or we can say these divisions became very rigid as we moved from the Rig Vedic period to the later Vedic period. Okay, then came the economic situation. The Rig Vedic Aryans were pastoral people, okay, and their main occupation was cattle rearing. Their wealth was estimated in terms of their cattle. When they permanently settled in North India, they began to practice agriculture. With the knowledge and use of iron, they were able to clean forest and bring more lands under their cultivation. And this is a very very important factor, and this was asked in UPSC prelims. Like that Aryans had the knowledge of iron. Yes, Iron Age is also called as the Iron Age. Okay, because they had sharper elements, they knew how to use the iron, so they could cut forest also, they could make sharper tools also, and they could bring like much better agriculture tools, and therefore much more for cultivation. Carpentry was also another important profession, and the availability of wood from the forest actually like became a profitable profession. Carpenters produced obviously variety of chariots and plows. Workers in metal made a variety of articles in copper, bronze and iron, and now you can find the word iron. Spinning was also another important occupation. Cotton and woolen fabrics were also made, and goldsmiths were also actively making ornaments. Pottery was also prevalent here, and different kinds of vessels were made for the domestic use. Trade was very important activity here, and rivers, as you can see in Harappan Valley civilization also, river and water was an important source of communication. So here also, transportation, here also river served as an important means of transportation. And transportation, here also trade will be what? Just like Harappan civilization, it will be a barter system. Okay, gold coins called nikshas, this you need to remember. Gold coin called nishka were used for as a medium of exchange in large transactions. So nishka is the gold coin. Okay. Then we'll talk about the religion. So Rig Vedic Aryans, they worship the natural forces. There was no god, here the natural forces. For example, earth, fire, the 5 elements, right? Fire, wind, what we call as. So here I'll write the Hindi names of 5 elements. We say na, our body is made of 5 elements. So what are those? There is fire, there is water, there is wind, there is air, there is sky, and then there is earth, right? So Agni, Vayu, Varun, then there is Akash, and earth is called as Dharti. So these are the 5 elements. So here you will find that these 5 elements were personified. Personified in the sense that you used to consider fire is a devta or a dev, like a female god or a main god. So you're personifying, you're considering them as a person, and then you're worshipping them. Okay, so important Rig Vedic gods, as I already told you, Prithvi, Agni, Vayu, Varun, and Indra, the thunder god. Indra was actually one of the most popular gods among them, and because I mean it says na Indra ka vajra agar pad jaye, so you can't survive, because he was like he was very feared god. Okay, next and important to Indra was Agni, who was regarded as an intermediary between the god and people, because it used to say that when you like lit a fire and when you do sacrifices, you're actually trying to connect with the gods. So Agni became the connection, or the, you can say, intermediary or a balance between gods and people. And then Varuna was supposed to be the upholder of natural order. Okay, and they were also female gods. So these also you need to remember, these are not female poets, these are female gods. And what are their names? Aditi and Usha. So there were no temples. This is a line that was asked in UPSC prelims. Here you will find no temples, because they're naturally worshipping, they are worshipping nature. You don't need to actually confine nature in one like temple, right? So there were no temples and no idol worship. You did not, you can personify them, you can consider that Agni might be a devta, but you're not making an idol of Agni and saying that okay, I'll worship this now as Agni. No, so you're worshipping Agni like in the present, in a natural form. And here you will find that prayers were offered to gods in the expectation of rewards. Obviously today also we have an exam and we say, oh God, please make us pass, oh God, please let me pass this. So we are actually trying to connect with God when we want good results. Okay, so here also you'll find it was no different. Prayers being offered, sacrifices being made to actually like make gods happy and in return get some rewards. Ghee, milk and grains were given as offerings. Elaborate rituals were also followed during the worship. Now this was all about the Rig Vedic culture. Now we'll move towards the later Vedic period, which is from 1000 to 600 BC. Okay, so Aryans, now here in this period they have moved from the Indus to the Indo-Gangetic plains. Okay, and here you will find that the Satpat Brahman, this you need to remember, it refers to the expansion of Aryans to the eastern area, to the eastern Gangetic plains. Several tribal peoples and kingdoms have been mentioned in this time, and one important development that happened in this time was basically development of kingdoms. So till now we had only janas or tribes, but now some of these tribes will come together and form larger kingdoms. Okay, so here you will find the mention of Kuru kingdom, Panchala kingdom. Okay, then Parikshit and Janmejaya were the famous rulers of this Kuru kingdom. Okay, Paravahana Javali was a popular king of Panchalas, and he was a patron of learning. So this you don't need to remember, but if you're from that particular state where Panchala kingdom used to be there, you need to remember, because then it comes in your state service examination. Okay, and after the fall of Kurus, you will realize than Panchalas, the other kingdoms like Kosala, Kasi, Videha, they came into prominence. Okay, so these are just the name of kingdoms, few kingdoms that you need to remember: Kuru, Panchalas, Kasi, Kosala and Videha. Okay, the famous rulers of Kasi was Ajatsatru. Janak was the king of Videha. It's the same king Janak whose daughter Sita was married to King Rama. Okay, of Ayodhya, and with its capital as Mithila, and that is why Sita was also called as the Mithileshwari. Okay, his court was adorned by the scholar Yajna Valkya, and Magadh, Anga, Vanga, they also seem to be the easternmost tribal kingdoms. So I'm talking about the kingdoms here, I'm not talking about the specific tribes. And the later Vedic texts, they also refer to the three divisions of India. What is it? Aryavarta, which is the northern India, then Madhya Desh, which is basically the central India, and then there is Dakshinapat, which is the southern India. Okay, repeat with me the three divisions: Aryavarta, northern India; central India will be called as Madhya Desha, and Dakshinapat will be called as southern India. Out of which UPSC asked this Dakshinapat question. Okay. Then we'll talk about the political organization. So the large kingdoms were formed during this later Vedic period that we already know, and many Jana and tribes they came together to form these Janpads. Okay, which were also called as Rashtras. So if I have to draw polity now, it will be you, then your family, okay, of two, then village, and then lot of villages coming together to form Vishu coming together to form tribe, and then tribes coming together to form kingdoms or Janpads. And Janpads are also called as Rashtras. Okay, hence the royal power here, you will see it has increased because your size of kingdom has increased. King is as bigger as his kingdom. The more is your kingdom size, the more is the power of the king. The king performed various rituals and sacrifices to strengthen his position. They include Rajasuya. Okay, and these three you need to remember, because these three you can write it in your mains answers also. So they include Rajasuya, which means when you are, for example, when when Ram is basically becoming the king. So the ceremony that you perform is basically Rajasuya ceremony, where you are basically holding him as a king. Then there is an Ashwamedha activity performed, or Ashwamedha ritual, wherein a horse sacrifice is done. That means wherein you allow that horse to run through kingdoms, and whichever kingdom accepts this horse and lets it pass through its territory, that means that kingdom has accepted your sovereignty. But if that kingdom revolts against you, does not allow the horse to pass, then you need to fight with that ruler, and if you win, then you get the kingdom. If you don't, then obviously that person gets the kingdom who has performed this exercise. So this was called as the Ashwamedha ritual. Then there is the Vajpaya, which is the chariot race. Okay, so these are three different kind of rituals that have been performed extensively during the later Vedic period. And the kings here, you will find, since they have a very large kingdom, they assume very large titles also. For example, Ahila Bhuvanpati, Raj Viswajanan, okay, like Lord of all the earth, and then Ekrat, Samrat. So like this, you will find the rulers have actually adopted the titles. In the later Vedic period, a large number of new officials were involved in the administration, in the addition of existing whatever we had. So there was Purohit, there was Senani, but there was another Gramani also. And now because the kingdom has become large and there is a large collection of land revenues, there is a large expenditure that has to be done and maintained, you will find that now your treasury officer has also be there. There is a tax collector also, there is a royal messenger also. At lower levels, you will find the administration was carried by the village assemblies. Okay, some form of decentralization, and the importance of Sabha and Samiti, you will find, has diminished, because now that particular kingdom is being maintained by the king along with his interior council. Now he is not, because see, the gap between the people and the king has increased, so obviously the importance of Sabha and Samiti will also decline. Then comes the economic condition. Iron was used extensively in this period, and this enabled people to actually clear the forest and to bring more land under cultivation so that they can have more of agriculture. Agriculture became their chief occupation now, and that is why you will find that here improved types of implements are being used, equipments are being used, improved types of cultivation methods have been used. Besides barley, rice and wheat are also grown. Knowledge of manures like fertilizers is also known, and that is why they are adding it to the soil so that their agriculture productivity increases. Industrial activity also became one of the major sources, and it became more varied, and there was a greater specialization. Like there will be few people only performing one kind of work, like there will be goldsmiths, there will be blacksmiths, there will be like people who are just making chariots. So there is specialization now involved. Okay, there will be metal workers, leather workers, carpenters, pottery makers, and you will find that they are doing their own special work. In addition to the internal trade, there was foreign trade, and this became very, very extensive. Okay, later Vedic people were familiar with the sea, and that is why you will find that they used to trade even with the Babylon, like so far in the west. A class of hereditary merchants called as Vanyas, or Banya as they call us, they came into existence because they were the people who were mostly involved in the trade, and they were the merchants. And Vaishyas were also carried out the trade and commerce. They organized themselves into guilds, and they were also called as the Ganas. Okay, this has been asked in the UPSC prelims before. And besides the Nishka, which was the gold coin present in the Rig Vedic time, there also came a silver coin such as Satman and Krishnala. Okay, so now I hope you remember Nishka, Krishnala and Satman, out of which you need to mention what is the gold coin, which is the silver coin. And these became the medium of exchange. Now we will talk about the social life. So the four divisions of society, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, the Varna system actually, which started during the Rig Vedic time, it became thoroughly established, rigidly established here, and now people could not change their varnas. Okay, the two higher classes, Brahman and Kshatriya, they enjoyed all the privileges, okay, of the society, and Vaishyas and Shudras, somewhere you can say they were little down in hierarchy. A Brahmin occupied the higher position even than a Kshatriya, but sometimes Kshatriya claimed a higher status over the Brahmins, because Kshatriya used to say that if we only protect our kingdom, the Brahmins will be able to stay. So there was like a little power struggle between Brahmin and Kshatriyas, but Brahmin definitely in a Varna system, if you draw, there will be Shudras, there will be Vaishyas, there will be Kshatriyas, and then there will be Brahmins. Okay, so Brahmins will also be will always be on the top. Okay, according to the Varna system. Now, many subcastes also came on the basis of what occupation you were doing within Brahmins or within Kshatriya or within Vaishya, and in the family you will find that like earlier when the families were equivocal sort of thing, like men and women enjoyed the same status. Here you will find the status of men rising in the family. The power of father increased during the later Vedic period, and there was no improvement in the status of women. Actually, there was a decline in the status of women. Now they were considered inferior, subordinate to men. Women also lost their political rights because Sabha and Samiti declined. So now there were no political organizations where women could participate, and that is why you will see that women have started losing their political rights slowly. Child marriages have become become common, which were not present, you can say which were not very common during the Rig Vedic period. You will find evidences of sati also here. According to Aitreya Brahman, a daughter has been described as a source of misery, because from the birth you will have to take care of it, and once she is ready or of the marriageable age, you will have to give dowry, send her to another house. Basically whatever you have imparted might get wasted, and that is why in Atriya Brahman, daughter was described as a source of misery, which today obviously we feel is a not a good concept. And however, the women in royal household, they enjoyed certain privileges because they were in the royal families. Then comes the religious part of it. So you will find that the gods of early Vedic period have lost their importance. Okay, like Indra and Agni, now they have lost their importance. But new gods like Prajapati, who is also called as the creator of this world, then Vishnu, who is called as the protector of the world, and Rudra, who is called as the destroyer of the world, they became prominent during this later Vedic period. Sacrifices obviously were still important, and rituals all they became more prominent, like more elaborate. Okay, instead of like 5 Brahmins, now you'll feel like 50 Brahmins instead of them. The importance of prayers also declined, and that of sacrifices increased. The importance of the priesthood, like especially the priests and Brahmins, their profession became very, like, first of all they acquired a very hierarchical position, and also it became a hereditary one. Like, you can't become a Brahmin until your father and your grandfather and your great grandfather are Brahmins. So basically a Varna system here became hereditary. Okay, the formula for sacrifices were invented, and they were then elaborately used by the priestly class, so that no common man can understand them, and they have to hire a priest to actually perform a sacrifice. Therefore, towards the end of this period, you will find there was a strong reaction from these lower classes against these priestly domination, and that's what led to the rise of Buddhism and Jainism. Okay, so there was a question asked in UPSC mains before, that what were the reasons for the rise of Buddhism and Jainism, and here you will find one of the reason was actually this, wherein the Varna system became so rigid so that Shudras and Vaishyas could not find an adequate representation in this Varna system. Secondly, you will find that there were so elaborate rituals, they became so expensive that common man could not perform the sacrifice. So therefore you will find that these common people started to actually find another way, like Buddhism and Jainism became their another culture to follow, another philosophy to follow, which offered them the relief from these expensive rituals. Okay, so here we end this chapter, and then in the next class we'll start with the chapter 4, which is basically Buddhism and Jainism.